Welcome back to Future Forum. We are here to talk about arts and culture, the very essence of who we are as a people, who we are as Trinidad and Tobago, the way we tell our stories, the way we tell our histories, the way we express ourselves, and the way that we can create the future. We have an amazing panel of kings and queens from Trinidad and Tobago this evening to share with us and lead this discussion. And I'm very happy to introduce them to you. Our panel moderator is Abeo Jackson. Now, Abeo is a dynamo of Caribbean creativity, intellectual energies, all wrapped up into an amazing powerhouse of a woman. She's an actor, acting coach, writer, dancer, choreographer, radio and television host, creative producer, as well as a theater producer. As with all of our panels, we have two amazing young people sitting on them. We have Tahira, who is a student of Belmont Secondary and who's really passionate about arts and culture in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have Afia, who's 15 years old, who loves to sing, dance, draw, paint, customize graphics and designs, and create her own songs and her own beats. On the panel as well is Carla Paris. Now, Carla operates the first boutique law practice in Trinidad and Tobago that focuses in the areas of entertainment, intellectual property, and sports law, where she provides specialist legal advice to persons in music, carnival, sports, film, fashion, events, and the entire broadcast sector. We also have Elvis Rajman joining us, a well-established cultural steward with over 30 years of experience in the performing arts at varying levels. He is the CEO of the Tobago Performing Arts Company, which recently launched, and they've just been rolling out a bunch of fantastic information and insights into reigniting arts and culture in the country. We are also have on our panel this afternoon Jules Sobia. Now, Jules has become a key architect in revolutionizing the local and regional energy landscape. He is the founder, CEO, and commander in chief of Caesars Army Limited. And I think everyone should know about Caesars Army. If you do not know, you need to go and check them out on the socials. I mean, we have a really fantastic lineup here this afternoon. And I am really happy to now hand you over to Mr. Beo Jackson to lead this discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. And I'm not going to take up too much of your time because I think it's really important for us to center our young people in this discussion. But as we get ready to center our young people, I think there are a couple of things that it's really important that we focus on in terms of how we center this conversation. Cultural product and entertainment. How do we protect, package, capitalize, and export our culture? How do we help youth appreciate and develop their talents? As we turn our attention specifically to the phrasing of the first question and our considerations of same, let us dissect exactly what we're proposing through a basic look at definitions. Protect, keep safe from harm or injury, preserve or guarantee by means of formal or legal measures. Package, put into a box or wrapping for sale or transport. To present someone or something an attractive or in an attractive or advantageous way. Capital asset, so intellectual achievement regarding collectively the ideas, customs, and social behaviors of a particular people, society, or environment. So now that we're on the same page in terms of the definitions and exactly what it is we're talking about, then the lofty supposition that one can protect while at the same time packaging, capitalizing, and exporting is a tall order and almost oxymoronic unless we first truly dissect the following. What does protection truly entail? Is it copyright, trademark, tangible heritage categorization through bodies such as the UN? Just to be saucy and provocative, Juve rum, anyone? Or better yet, the steel pan, our national instrument still yet to be proclaimed. Copyright and trademark snuffed from under our noses multiple times over. What of the curation of that which currently exists? Traditions that we are in danger of losing. What about social responsibilities to the indigenous spaces and spaces out of which tradition and heritage comes? Many of them now marginalized and branded as hotspots for reasons that have little to do with being a cultural or creative melting pot. Have we done enough? Have we incentivized corporate, social, moral, cultural responsibility? Have we allowed arts and culture to truly serve, enrich, reform, and repair the national landscape? How have we interwoven it into every single sector, creating opportunities for these very beautiful, brilliant young people on whose behalf we are here to advocate today, thus also fortifying an inextricable, identifiable thread in the fabric of our society? Is it fair to feed into ideologies of capitalism, fluff packaging, and export? The Cliff Notes version of cultural exoticism, if you will, when we have yet to truly reconcile social and historical contextualization of art and culture on our very shores. The role and power of we ting in we own space. Tony Hall, where he walked in power, wrote prolifically of the danger and disservice of commoditizing environment in his reflections on Juve as ritual, routine, and lived process. Do our young, budding, creative geniuses even know of Tony Hall? Do they know enough of his philosophies, his methodologies, the living library now lost? And if not, who and what is responsible for teaching them? It is this misplaced, or at the very least underemphasized focus that has consistently done us a disservice while also failing, or maybe it's actually being terrified to ask the classist elephant question in the room. Who does capitalizing, packaging, and export benefit, and how? How do we come to a meaningful consensus of what viability of a sector actually means, whether, of course, economically, socially, or through tradition and ritual? This is not about the vilifying of economics, particularly in this time where the buzzword that is diversification has yet again resurfaced within the post-pandemic framework, but rather allowing economic considerations to be at ground level, benefiting actual lived experiences. One of the many international examples of thriving creative ecosystems that have no interest in simple export, but rather the potential that exists within an indigenous space, bringing interest and revenue inward to circulate within the space, rather than dressing up one's birthright and sending it out into a potential nomadic existence for anyone with good sense, foresight, and the backing of first world privilege to claim. It is with all of these questions and contexts in mind, as well as the reality of a sector currently in limbo, doing its best to grapple with the 18 months of pandemic trauma, that I ask us to consider the way forward, where we pay more than lip service to the voices of the brilliant young generation with real, fierce views on the immediacy of the world, how we communicate, as well as the baton we are getting ready to hand over. How do we ensure we pass on a legacy that is worthy and a space that allows them to thrive? How do we entice them to stay, as opposed to answering calls from foreign lands that promise opportunities that we do not, calls that cannot center their unique indigeneity? As a creative that was moved to answer that call not once, but twice, Andre Tanker's love song to that rite of passage swirls ever present in the forefront of my mind while writing these words. I went away, I leave and I come back home. I come back to stay, I must see my way. We must deconstruct the incongruencies of today's question one, to give room and voice to question two. And we absolutely need the input of our young heroes to do it, because it's time. With that said, I hand over to presentations from Tahira and Afia.
Children need to be educated on not only the musical arts but local literature like V.S. Naipaul, Michael Anthony, and Derek Walton, and artists like Bosco Hola, who share our culture through their pieces. Even local designers are undervalued at the local level.
Many students are encouraged to play pan at primary and secondary school, but the art is not as celebrated even though it's a part of our culture. Speaking of the pan, cultural artifacts such as that need to be patented so that people are aware of their origins and they cannot be stolen from us.
As a pan enthusiast, communicating with others who do not share my love for the art form feels underwhelming. Young people like me need to be informed on the history of the pan. As patriots, we need to at least know what goes on in the pan world, as it all started with this instrument. Just the other day, the Prime Minister turned the soil for a new pan theatre.
Our school should have arts and culture a part of the history curriculum, that students learn about our culture and its origins. Not just a carnival project once a year. They need to get more involved in calypso or soca competitions. Having these events at primary or secondary school makes them excited. When they learn of our culture, they are more excited to participate in it.
The history curriculum needs to be restructured to include more Caribbean history, so young people can have in-depth information about the history of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean and how it shapes our culture.
A safe space where people can showcase their talent in art and culture should be created. This would allow persons to express themselves and feel celebrated, and it would encourage persons of all ages to want to show their talent, and environment open to all.
Our film industry needs development too. When was the last time you saw a local movie or TV show? Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival is generally the only place that these aspects of our culture are shown. But they can become a part of a daily media intake.
A local streaming platform that provides local content, TV shows, and movies made right here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Our culture lives through people, and if it is not taught, it cannot survive. There is a need for greater integration and education of our youths on cultural and old traditions to keep them going and for the pride to be reinvigorated into the country, taking these traditions forward for decades to come.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you so much to our young people. I mean, hearing from them is so important. And I think, as I said before, and I apologize if my internet has been going in and out. As we know, the weather today is very, very unpredictable. And I have a sneaky suspicion because of all of the rain around that might be causing some disturbance. So apologies, but working with what I have, you know, as we as artists are known to do. We work with what we have. So listening to our young people a little while ago, I heard things like safe spaces. I heard things like centering our history and our culture, centering our indigenous self-expression, celebrating it. I heard a lot about local content, daily media intake. And I think those things are really, really important in terms of shaping this conversation. Sometimes we don't realize that our young people are paying attention and that they are listening. We have been having conversations about local content for ages. And it's wonderful to see young people now also entering that conversation and echoing a lot of the sentiment that has come previously. So that said, let's head across to our panelists. Let's hear from them. Maybe we can start things off with Carla Paris, entertainment and sports lawyer. Welcome, Carla.
Hi, Ariel. Thanks so much for having me. And I really was very, very motivated and amazed by a lot of these statements of the young people that we saw before. They definitely are paying attention and they're on point in terms of where the industry should be going and what the gaps are in the market for things like streaming platforms and a couple of the other things that they mentioned, you know. Hello?
Hello, are you hearing me, Carla?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Did you hear anything that I said?
Okay, wonderful.
Oh.
Say again?
I wasn't sure whether you heard anything that I said because you just went
Yes,
off.
we did.
Oh, great. Okay.
We did. What we're going to do now is throw to your presentation and then we're going to come back and chat a little bit about it, okay?
Sure. Sounds great. I'm not actually, okay. I'm not actually seeing the presentation loading.
Okay, so they're working it out. There it is. There it is. All right. Here we go.
So while he gets these slides ready and in order, I'll just tell you a bit about what the presentation is about. Really, because we're talking to people, you know, kids the age group 11 to 17. I wanted to give an overview of what the career opportunities are, because after all, we are talking about the future and the future forum, you know, and oftentimes I have parents call me up to say, look, you know, my daughter's talented in music and theater and arts and whatever it is, like what are the possibilities for this particular sector? Okay, so I think we are ready to go. So one of the things that I really kind of wanted to start off by discussing, which I was really amazed to hear that one of the kids earlier mentioned it, is that our economy traditionally, and even as long as I have been a child, which was a long time ago, the reality is that it focuses on oil and gas, petrochemicals, the manufacturing sector, food and beverages, and oftentimes the importance of developing the creative industry and careers in the creative industry are often overlooked, have been overlooked and still are to some extent. However, the data that we have in front of us, whether it comes from the World Intellectual Property Office, from the United Nations, a whole host of different bodies, show that the value of the entertainment industry in many, many countries is astronomical. The value in terms of what persons add to the GDP, what they add to you know, different careers and so forth cannot be underscored. Next slide, please. So I wanted to kind of just give a very simple overview of what intellectual property law refers to. And what it refers to is creations of the mind. So oftentimes when you think of a creation, you think of something that's just tangible. You know, it might be an iPhone, for example, or it might be a car. But intellectual property refers to things that we come up with in our brains and our minds. So literary inventions, artistic works, symbols, names, images, and so forth. Books, music. And these are the things that we need to be able to protect culturally and protect as a country so that once our kids enter into these fields, they're actually now developing products that are going to generate long-term value. Next slide, please. I wanted to point out, before you play the music, I wanted to point out that right here in Trinidad and Tobago, we have young, emerging, budding talent that was developed and homegrown right here. A lot of the times when I talk to young people, the view is that in order for you to have a successful career or to skyrocket into some level of stardom, you need to migrate immediately. Your parents need to fly you to the United States, to some parts of the United Kingdom, and that's where it's going to happen for you. But here it is, we have somebody right here on our soil that is doing well, and we've all seen her growth. So I just want to play you a little bit of one of her hits. Play music, please.
Go down, go down.
Mommy. Thank you. So I'm sure everybody in your room has heard this song, Baila Mami from Nyla. And what I want to point out is that Nyla, what you see now in terms of where she is traveling all over the world, you know, she was at BET Awards a couple of years ago. This did not come overnight. She's been at this. Of course, she comes from a musical family, but she started, I would say I met Nyla maybe 5-6 years ago. So it's a constant work in progress. It's a constant effort. But again, it's proof that we have the talent here. And once you surround yourself with the right types of people, the opportunities are endless. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I don't think I need to point out to anybody in your room who this is. Again, homegrown person, you know, he's from Tobago. He did, however, migrate to the US pretty early, I think, in his life. But again, it's proof that persons born here, you know, from local families and so forth can go on to be mega stars. And now he is in the film industry, of course, was in Black Panther, starring in a whole host of other movies and so on. If you all follow him on Instagram, you'll see the various opportunities that he's always availing himself of. So again, I just want to point out that take the mindset out of your brain space that people who look like us and talk like us aren't able to produce. We are. Next slide, please. So this, for anybody who knows me, would know that Rihanna is my absolute all-time favorite in every way. I don't know how many of y'all know that Rihanna has now been named a billionaire. She is second only in the world in terms of the wealthiest female musician to Oprah Winfrey. This is an absolutely astronomical achievement. Now, of course, again, from Caribbean soil, from Barbados. And one of the things that I absolutely love about Rihanna is that she's never forgotten where she's come from. She reps Barbados all the time. When, of course, we had crop over, she would visit pretty often. I don't know how many of you all know her brother is heavily involved in Carnival over there. So she usually takes part in his particular Carnival band and so on. But what I wanted to mention to y'all, and it's very important to note, is that Rihanna's wealth, or her recent wealth, actually did not come just from her music career. Where it's come from is her recognition. I would say at a really interesting time in her career that just relying on music for an income was not enough. What she did is she developed the Fenty Beauty empire. So she looked around and decided and made a determination about what are the gaps in the market. What are the opportunity gaps? And she launched the Fenty Beauty makeup line. And then from there, Fenty Skin, recently Fenty Perfume, and so on, right? So again, proof that persons who are born here can develop into global stars. Next slide, please. So of course, y'all, everybody, again, I don't need to point out who this is, Kim Kardashian. Now, the reason that I wanted to mention her, she's not Caribbean at all, is because I find it very interesting. Many times when young people come to me to say that they want to be involved in the entertainment industry, the international industry, or even parents, they say that their children want to model the Kardashians, the Kardashian brand, and so on. And while this is interesting, because there's no doubt that this family has branded themselves and has in many ways developed an empire, I wanted to show you guys the earlier slides to show that people from the Caribbean also can develop very strong brands. And we don't just have to look and model and pattern ourselves off of who we think are, you know, global influencers and US or foreign citizens, that we too have that example right here in the region. Next slide, please. So what is important here is the question of entrepreneurship. So we are not in a world anymore where you can expect to get a job and be in this one particular job until you're 65. like your parents may have. It's just not possible. The pandemic has shown this. We need to be thinking outside of the box. We need to be thinking in terms of businesses. So even in all of those professions that I mentioned to you all, music, film, and so on, at the heart of it, these persons are business people and not just working on the creative aspect. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk very briefly about the various opportunities in a music career, because not everybody should be or can be or wants to be a performing artist or a soca artist or reggae or whatever it is. The opportunities are there to be in the industry, but in a different way. So what I think is important when you're modeling your career is to look at what are the market gaps. And we have a serious gap in terms of artist management companies and talent management companies. I'm often asked, again, by parents or by aspiring stars, aspiring celebrities across the Caribbean, who are the talent management agencies that I could refer people to help shape and develop your career? And there are very, very few. So this is an opportunity that y'all can look at. Being a booking agent is somebody who helps to literally, as the word says, book somebody gigs across the world and so on. Of course, when the industry opens back up, this will be more profitable, but there is also a massive opportunity in terms of the virtual space. PR persons, media persons. Oftentimes when people want to enter the media profession, you think you need to work inside a television station, on a radio station, but there is a vast need for artists, creative persons, designers, theatrical persons to have PR people who can speak to their needs and who can issue statements on their behalf in an intelligent manner and in a way that helps to grow their career. Next slide, please. Film. In the film industry, again, you may not want to be a Winston Duke. You may not want to be the face of the film. You may not want to be the actor, but you just want to be involved in the industry. And there is a great need for these kinds of skill sets. Sound engineers, script writers, line producers, directors, agents to help book and push and distribute your content globally. Somebody mentioned the question of local streaming platforms. That is a massive need. But until such time, we need people to be able to shop our content. Next slide, please. Fashion. Fashion is a huge, huge industry developing. We have universities here that offer fashion degrees, which I'm really happy to see. Again, you may not want to be the designer. You may not want to be the costume designer, the high-end, the luxury, the Caribbean apparel designer, but you want to work within it because all of these fields require a support team. And we don't see the behind the scenes, but it's really the behind the scenes that allow you to see that brand who is the face of. So fashion illustrators, textile designers, personal stylists, shoppers. The question of a personal stylist is something that I'm seeing emerging as I would say, a relatively new need in the profession. So a personal stylist is somebody who would work with an on-air personality, a YouTuber, to help that person basically shop whatever it is, your clothes, your accessories, and so forth for set. So you don't have to be running around wildly. And I can tell you, in my case, because I also have a YouTube series and a television series called The Business of Carnival, I had to hire a personal stylist for 1 or 2 of these seasons to kind of go and get various clothing from local designers, because I'm very big on the fashion on the show must only be local persons. And in order to avoid the hassle of having to go to each person, you find somebody who can gather that for you. That's a real profession, which you can utilize across the region. Social media strategist is extremely important also. For a fashion designer, you need somebody who can help you in terms of your Instagram, your Facebook, your TikTok, Clubhouse, to make sure that the branding and the aesthetic is on point. PR and public relations I spoke to already, but the same thing. Next slide, please. So before you play the clip, I wanted to give you all a very short excerpt of what Second Star, who you all again would be familiar with, what he said in terms of some of the greatest learnings from him as a young and emerging soca star coming out of the profession, and to understand why, although oftentimes you hear that arts and culture are these creative fields, which is true, there's also a business and financial element to all of this, which you need to understand in order to be successful. Play the clip, please.
I have other investments and I am working on them currently now. That's why I said Corona was definitely a blessing, because as a young man getting into the industry, you're not really educated as to the hype that comes with it. You make a lot of mistakes. But fortunately, I have that guidance around me now where it's like, okay, take some money now, invest it there, invest it there. I mean, investment is not something that is generally taught in schools. Something you have to go out there and learn on your own now. And I think it's important that every single person, no matter what, you diversify your income, because you're just one disaster away from losing it all if you only have one stream of income.
So you see that Second Star there spoke about the importance of having various income streams, understanding how to manage money and all of that. So all of that is relevant to arts and culture professions. Next slide, please. Okay, so before you play this clip, this is a clip from Ruth Rome. Earlier this season, this was season 5 of the show, and here you hear Rome talk about the importance of social media to your professions in the arts and cultural sector also. Play clip, please.
I could give you a personal story from me in the business of Carnival when I went to a sponsor. And I remember the brand manager saying to me that they do not advertise on Instagram because Instagram is for kids. I will never forget that room. That stuck with me. And I will remember that until the day I die.
Of what age group?
This was somebody in their
our parents'
20s.
generation? No, in their 20s.
And who said it's for kids. This is a serious product. This is a serious brand. We don't advertise.
So let me just give a quick stat to
it's changing
any
now.
brands that are listening, right? There are over 800,000 users in Trinidad and Tobago on Facebook alone.
Right.
So you're not even talking Instagram or TikTok here. And Trinidad and Tobago's population is 1.4 million people.
So there you will see the importance of social media to developing your arts and cultural careers, the importance of understanding the statistics and the importance of understanding how, when you all are developing your careers in these fields, you work with people and you work with brands who understand how to utilize the platforms. Last slide, please. On next slide. So really what I want to say is that we're in an era where you are very much empowered to go forth and design your own careers. We need to let go of the old paradigms that there are only certain professions and only certain fields that are worthwhile. That just isn't true. Next slide, please. And we're also in an era now where the whole everything has shifted. Back in the day, you would find that it was an older person who would have been in the head of a department, an older person that would have been the head of a company. Now you realize that it's younger people, persons like this man on the left-hand side who are introducing themselves to the persons on the right-hand side, the older persons. The time is now. You do not have to be in your 40s, 50s, 60s in order to succeed and to have opportunity to take a seat at the table. Last slide, please. And this is basically the end of my presentation. If anybody's interested, you all can contact me on these various platforms, and we can now move on to the rest of the discussion. I hope that you all heard me clearly and that everything came across, because I know that we have had some internet connectivity issues.
Thank you so much, Carla. That was truly informative. In terms of the direction that you took, talking about careers, sustainability, charting your own course, touching on exactly what protection of intellectual property means, the centering of local and homegrown talent, acknowledging that we don't need to be, validated per se on foreign shores, but that what we have here is worthwhile and worthy of investment. There's not a question as to whether Trinidad and Tobago has a wealth of talent. It's really interesting though, because the chat with our young people is pumping right about now. Saying good afternoon to Alan, Key, Cyan, Oba, Khalifa. Cyan, who had some very, very harsh words about the Kardashians. And this is what I love so much about our young people, their understanding of accountability culture. Some people call it cancel culture. I think our young people really understand accountability culture. So Cyan, shouts for you for that particular reference, using terms like culture vulture and profiting off of Black and Indigenous culture. Those are really, really important conversations that we need to have. And it's great that our young people have the language and the forthrightness and the bravery and the courage to have those conversations that maybe the millennials, us older millennials might be a little bit uncomfortable having. So I really do appreciate that. Keep your comments coming. Feel free to ask questions, and I will be sure to share that with our panelists. So let's move on to our next panelist. How about we chat with Elvis Ragman out of sweet Tobago. Good afternoon, Elvis.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm really happy to be among this very esteemed panel to share in terms of, the future and creativity. Are you hearing me clearly?
So how about we get right into your presentation? I'm particularly excited about your link with Tobago Performing Arts Company. Like, I know you all are doing brilliant things. I know that's not what you're necessarily here to talk about, but I'm sure it will be in there somewhere. So let's go with your presentation.
It's very much in there. So it's just Shaquille, you could just cue it up. Is the volume? We'll continue. So I'm here to talk about creating the future. As the CEO for the Tobago Performing Arts Company, we are charged with the responsibility of really creating a very strategic sort of game plan as to how we could help redefine and reinvest in the arts and people, especially here in Tobago and of course nationally. So we have a very short presentation that sort of captures the essence of this. Next slide. So today's focus, getting a sense of the performing arts and culture and their place in the future. What would our future look like and how will we get there? We have the view we can leverage our creative and cultural product to become a leader in the global creative market, and it's something that we feel very strongly about here in Tobago, and hence the reason TPAC was formed. We intend to, cultural tourism is a huge part of the market that we wish to invest in, hence the reason we see the arts as one of the areas that we're going to certainly be investing in to kind of really support those initiatives going forward. Next slide. So I just wanted to kind of break down some of the definitions so we could put in context what we're talking. I mean, performing arts, performed or expressed creativity, creative activity, dance, drama, music, film, culture, or way, or norms, or traditions, or values, industry. Consider all the factors that contributes to the business of the area. So the future, the creative industries are rapidly growing and can help to sustain our economy. But the million-dollar question is how? So next slide. So I don't want to focus on the how. we have been talking the how for quite some time. It has been decades and decades we've been talking about the how. We are now focusing on the now. And the things and areas that we need to sort of really focus on that will achieve the now. So I have 5 different areas here. Enhancing educational efforts and build well-rounded youth and citizens. So investing in the youth is very important. Investing in the art form. I mean, we have the performing arts happening in schools, and there isn't a heavy enough investment that would allow for people who wish to have diverse career paths in that they could explore. So investment through education and development programs is something that we feel very, very strongly about. The use of qualitative data and use of data to help drive the non-art sector. How we use the information that is out there within the country to help drive us to making informed decisions so we could treat with those things. But we also recognize that data and doesn't necessarily capture feelings. So is the kind of approach that we need to be taking, how we kind of really collaborate, reach out, communicate, network with other entities within the fraternity so we can make those sort of informed decisions. Adding value to the social development agenda and of other sectors. How do we add value to those things? The boost cultural tourism, image, brand, and interest. As I said before, cultural tourism is a big part of where we wish to diversify into here in Tobago, and I'm sure this is a model that is not just followed by Tobago. It is happening across the world. We are now coming on board and creating a structure that allows for us to support it in a very sustainable kind of way. And of course, build our trade capacity. One, capacity building is very important, but we need to improve the product. If we want to really be competitive and be able to be, trade what we have here within, not just in Tobago, but within Trinidad and Tobago, we need to really advance on the capacities. Next slide. So the key things to consider: innovation. I think we have seen how the younger generation has been able to use their own headspace, the things that they've been exposed to. They're very much into the new technologies. How they've been able to utilize the technologies and been able to advance on creativity, add a whole new dimension in terms of creativity. So it's something that we have to be about more aware and about more acute and embrace. What COVID has done, COVID certainly forced us, for want of a better word, into really embracing technology even more. And I think if we really build a stronger working knowledge of how we use the technology, it could help us to become a lot more innovative. In being interactive, we live in Trinidad and Tobago. There's these things, everybody functions in silos. I think the functioning in silos has prevented us from really succeeding or even breaking the kind of barriers as we ought to. So the cross-sectoral collaborations for creatives, creating immersive experience for the consumer. So that is the approach that I feel that we need to be adopting. And of course, inspiring. I think it's very important that we create hope, especially in light of what's going on right now. We need to give people hope. And us creatives, we have always done this throughout our years. Years and years and decades have gone, and it has been charged to us coming up with beautiful music, beautiful sort of experiences, beautiful dances, beautiful films. So the inspiring aspect is something that we feel that we need to nurture even more and push and foster in terms of moving us into that future where the arts is going to be play a critical role in how we could even monetize, which is something that we feel very strongly about. Next slide. So we've just covered some of the areas that currently we are focusing on in Tobago in terms of moving the sector here. And the company recently launched a couple on Independence Night. And this is the agenda that we are pushing here on the island and nationally. And we'd certainly like to get that sort of feedback. But this is the approach that we believe is necessary to moving the industry forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elvis. Really, really informative, really exciting stuff. I think there's a magic that's Tobago has always managed to capture and maintain where your arts and culture is concerned. One of our young people inside of the chat is saying, Oba is saying, it's so sad that Tobago culture is underrepresented because it's so fascinating. And I think that with the development now of the Tobago Performing Arts Company, we're going to get the opportunity to really center Tobago in a really, really meaningful way. But just to summarize, loving the stuff that you touched on in terms of intersections of performance, culture, and industry, and how do we make that meaningful without one compromising the other, particularly that concept of industry compromising the integrity of the others. And that idea of cultural tourism, which means you're bringing investment into a space as opposed to packaging and exporting and sending it out into the universe and hoping for the best kind of thing, which I think is...
Actually, we see it both ways. When we talk cultural tourism, we're not just talking about just how we can attract tourists to come to here in Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago. How can we package products and we go out and sell it there? That is also a way of really capturing that tourist dollar. And I think that's the approach that we're taking, because we're not just looking at it from the perspective of having people here. How about, the Tobago Performing Arts Company or the National Theatre Arts Company in Trinidad or other entities going out and promoting a full month of productions in Europe or in Chicago. So I think we need to flip it. Jules, within Caesar's Army, they have taken the experiences of Carnival throughout many Caribbean islands and North America. So the template is there. It's for us to want to advance on it and be daring. And this is certainly what is necessary going forward.
I think the template that you're talking about there is really powerful too, because that idea of touring, long ago, our pansides used to tour. We've had National Dance Company and such, etc., and theatre companies that have toured, but there's also power in terms of still being very much in control of your product with the idea of touring. And having a real measure of control and letting your product still be communicated through our own voices, even if it is not in our indigenous space, which I think is really, really powerful. You mentioned data, importance, not just statistics, but ethnographic style data, where we really get into how people feel and what they want and all that kind of stuff. How to manipulate technology, particularly post-COVID, which is really where our young people come in, because if there's one thing they know how to do extremely well is manipulate technology. And finally, that idea of us having operated in silos for a really, really long time. So you have Pan doing what they're doing, Calypso doing what they're doing, Soca doing what they're doing, theater, dance, and as opposed to a real meaningful coming together of the creative sector in general to advocate for ourselves and for our young people, creating us, as we said before, a safe space that they can continue to thrive. Yeah. So as we bring up the rear, let's head on across to the final person on our panel today, Mr. Caesar's Army himself, Jules Sobian. Feel free, take it away.
Greetings, everyone. I was told that I only had 5 minutes, so I tried my best to compact everything so that it could be easily understood. The question that was posed to me was, what should our future look like in respect to arts and culture? So even before I started to think about that, I wanted to make sure that it's clearly understood what culture means and what art means. Well, the arts. In particular, culture is the elements, or are the elements, that really characterize our way of life as a people, right? For example, mass is our culture, pan is our culture, calypso, soca, chutney, that's our culture, right? But arts is like a subdivision of culture, but it comprises of many creative disciplines. So typically, like, the arts encompasses visual arts, literary arts, performing arts, right? So when you're thinking about that broad spectrum, you're thinking about theater, you're thinking about film, you're thinking about literature, painting, sculpture, poetry, music. I touch on calypso and soca. Now they're singing new calypso. Dance, storytelling, spoken word, etc., etc., right? And as I said before, carnival is our culture, pan is our culture, Juve is our culture. There are many things that embody our culture. And even in a respect of mine, I mean, I play a part as well in terms of exporting the culture. So even if I am doing events, some way, somehow, a part of my culture is being represented in the events that I do. And that is really important, right? So based on the question, what does the future look like for arts and culture? I came up with an acronym. FUTURE. So I'm making it real easy for you all. What does the future look like? I broke it down. F is for future. Basically, the future is your. Who am I speaking to? The next generation. You guys are the future. You guys are actually creating the future. The next generation of TNT, you all are representing for arts and culture in the future. So you all start off as F. And when I say the future, I also have to say F as is formidable. I believe that our future is formidable. I believe that our future is strong because you will all be taking our arts and our culture even further to the world. That's what I see. The next generation of our arts and our culture is going to take our arts and our culture even further to the world in the future. So that's the first thing. F, future, which is y'all, and I believe that the future is formidable, which is strong. You in this context, I believe that it represents understanding. As the future of our arts and our culture, it is very important for you all to understand why the arts and culture is important to us. And what is even more important is that the nation needs to even understand why is arts and culture important to the nation. So by understanding exactly your passions and actually building upon them so that they could lead towards your true purpose, we can actually see the understanding of arts and culture developing within ourselves where we are able to take it forward, right? And as a nation, I also believe that we need to understand how important arts and culture are as a country, because it is only until we really understand the importance, we will learn how to harness it. We will learn how to strengthen it. And we will look to find new and improved ways of sharing our arts and our culture to the world. So again, it's very important, the understanding. Maybe you're passionate about some element of arts. Maybe you're passionate about some aspect of the culture. It is important to truly understand what it means so that when you're ready to take it to the world, people understand the real story behind it. People understand this was developed from Trinidad and Tobago. So the understanding of arts and culture is the next important step. So after we understand how important our arts and culture is to us, especially as a nation, now we have T. We have to take it to the world. We have to take what we do best and share it with the world. And this is so important now because for me, being involved in events, I could have basically said to myself, look, my real goal was to do events in Trinidad and Tobago and call her George. That was my be-all and that's my end-all. That's the end of it for me. That's the full stop. But what I did is that I actually propelled myself to take what was my passion and partially what was my culture and take it further. So I went to Barbados with it, and I went to Jamaica with it, and eventually I went internationally. Because when I started to export my events and my culture regionally, then as Carla would have shown, Rihanna attended one of my events in Barbados. Usain Bolt attended one of my events in Jamaica, which now propelled me and my culture to go internationally with my events. So it's important that you don't fixate on just Trinidad and Tobago based on your passion for the arts or based on your passion for the culture. Take it to the world. And another important T that is important is technology. You all are the future. You all are the next generation. And technology plays a major role in this aspect of taking it to the world. Talking about social media here, it was already discussed. We're talking about virtual reality. We're talking about augmented reality. So we need to find new and innovative ways to take our arts and our culture to the world. A perfect example for me is when the pandemic had hit. I could not do my events anymore physically. So what I did was I pivoted into technology, where I developed a virtual reality platform to bring forth my events virtually. That's what you have to do. Take it to the world. So now I have a virtual platform that is now able to access the globe at large, to come experience the music of Trinidad and Tobago or the cultural aspect of events virtually. So it's important. T, take it to the world. T, think of technology. All right, U. So when we find ways to take our arts and culture to the world, especially with technology, we now begin to uplift not just the nation or the entire nation, we begin to uplift ourselves. The more people get to understand why our arts and culture is so unique to us in TNT, the more people will want to come and visit Trinidad and Tobago. And not just for Carnival, they will come at all times during the year. So TNT becomes more recognized, and the individuals who take their time to perfect their arts and to export their culture will now be recognized around the world, and not just here in TNT. So it's important that we uplift ourselves, we uplift the nation, because we have to start thinking global. We have to start thinking international. And by uplifting and supporting others who are also trying to uplift our nation through the arts and the culture, that's really important too. Support local, support our artists. I find myself on iTunes and I'm spending money on Kanye, spending money on Jay-Z, but Jimmy October, Kes, Marshall Montano, Drupati, these people have, you can sign up and buy songs from them online. Support our local people, support our arts, support our culture. So it's important that when you also think of uplifting the nation and uplifting yourself, you're also supporting an entire ecosystem, which is your country, Trinidad and Tobago, and everybody that is embodied in the arts and the culture, right? R. What happens when we uplift each other and the nation? R. We start to proudly raise our TNT flag all over the world. We start to raise the flag. That's R. So the world gets to know more about us, more about who we are as a people in the arts, in the culture. It is important that once we uplift and we take ourselves to the world, we are now planting flags all over. A flag in Holland, a flag in Japan, a flag in Afghanistan even. Think about that. But we need to start raising the flag, let people understand what we are as a people, who we are, what we are about, what are the stories, what embodies the culture. So again, the world gets to know more about us because they will get to know more about us as a people. They want to know more about J'ouvert. Look at what happened with the rum. They don't even know what J'ouvert really means. They want to come here to learn to play pan, or maybe how to learn how to stick fight. They want to come Napa to see a cultural play, etc., etc. By raising the flag, we are going to do that, and we're going to endorse Trinidad and Tobago's culture on the world circuit. And another R that I want to highlight is that the greatest time to do it is now. R for restart. After the pandemic, everything is reset. Everything you must rethink, relook, reboot. R is so important because we have a restart. Now is the time for the future to come now and say, raise the flag, everything that you never got the chance to do, everything that you said you didn't have the time to do, everything that you said you couldn't do, now is the time because it's a restart. So think about that restart as a time for us to now start raising our flag, because the world is now starting after this pandemic, and the best time to start is now. Last but not least, E. Remember our acronym here is future. So we reached the last E. E. When we start to proudly raise our flag all over the world, after this restart, after this reset, after this reboot, whatever you want to call it, 20 hours, right? Based on this pandemic, we have, last but not least, E. Everyone. Everyone in TNT benefits. Everyone in some shape or form plays their role or is now playing their part in taking our arts and our culture to the world, who we are as a people. E could mean a lot of things based on everyone, because of course education is a key. If you're going to represent the culture, you have to understand what's going on in terms of the culture. You have to understand the true stories. Also, if you're trying to use it as a profession, as your passion, and you're harnessing it to become an entrepreneur, you have to, education is key, right? But everyone is the most important part of it, because we are all cultural ambassadors of TNT. And it is now time for each and every one of you to start creating the future, because that's why I started off as saying the future is you, and the future looks formidable, and the future looks strong, because you are in charge of it. You are creating the future, and that's why I believe it's truly in good hands. Blessings and thanks for hearing me out.
Fantastic. Yes, Jules. Animated, engaging. I love it. Future. I'm going to make sure I get it right. Future, talking about the formidable next generation. Who they're ready and raring to go. I know they have a lot of things they want to ask. The understanding of why the arts is so important, culture is so important, this understanding of who we are. We talking raising the flag across, I missed you. I forget you. Uplifting the nation and ourselves, i.e. supporting local. All of a sudden I can't spell. Then we're talking about raising the flag across the globe. And the word that I love, restart. Here's why, because I've been monitoring while you're all talking, multitasking, and there is the potential that our industry could restart in the next 4 weeks. That is news coming to hand, breaking news. Depending on how vaccination goes, they are saying that we could possibly restart in 4 weeks. I'm so excited about the possibilities. So restart gave me a lot of excitement there, and finally everyone, people, because I mean we done past watermark, and this is about how do we leave something better and worthwhile and wonderful for them. So I want to hand over to Hira and Afia, making sure I'm pronouncing names correctly. And I know you all must have a wealth of questions that you want to ask Jules, Carla, and Elvis. So feel free to ask them. Ask hard questions, Hard, right? Tahira, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I wanted to ask this question beforehand, but I'm not quite sure who to ask it to. But if I could just get an answer from Mr. Caesar on sorry. What do you think about making cultural sessions somewhat mandatory within schools? Most of them containing students' personal artworks and stuff like that.
I think it's most integral. Definitely, I can say that based on the next generation Because let's just say based on when I first started, let's say being an entrepreneur, nobody taught me how to become an entrepreneur. In fact, it was to become an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or maybe just a businessman. Nobody really taught me how my life actually evolved and how I could follow my passion. So I do feel like education itself, from a next generation perspective, needs to reform, it needs to reinvent itself. So basically what you're saying there is something that is now becoming mandatory in our education system. So I do believe that elements such as that needs to be installed now in next generation to be even more prepared, more understanding of how they can go forth with prosperous sort of employment within the arts and within the culture. So I do believe so, yes, I agree.
Any other of our panelists in the meantime? Afia seems to be having a little bit of difficulty. She's going in and out connection-wise. But maybe even Elvis and Carla want to take a stab at that question in terms of what role do you see education playing in terms of arts and culture in Trinidad and Tobago at the moment?
Well, I would take a stab.
Carla, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to add to what Jules was saying in terms of how integral it is for culture.
No, go ahead, Carla, go ahead.
Oh yeah, what I was saying is I want to add to what Jules was saying in terms of how integral arts and culture should be in a curriculum. But beyond the importance of the cultural aspect, I think what is missing, especially from the primary school level, is the understanding of intellectual property. Because that connection between how we protect our culture and how we monetize our culture is what is going to take us to the next level. Because it's all well and good to teach kids how to be the best graphic artists, designers, theater producers, etc. But if nobody is teaching you from an early age how to protect what you are creating and how to monetize this really and truly, honestly, I find it to be very little value, because we're always going to be operating from a position of victimhood, which is where we find ourselves in the Caribbean. We're always victims. Somebody's taking our carnival costume. Somebody's the Jubei rum question, for example. Somebody's anyway, I don't want to get into that, but I'm just saying the whole question of not understanding our worth, our cultural names, our cultural products, and so forth. So I think that's where we have to start from, not just the high school level, but really from primary, and breaking down the concepts. What is copyright? What is a trademark? What is a patent? And that's where, because I could tell you as a lawyer, some of the most challenging matters for me are having to undo a lot of really messy situations where there's nothing in paper, there was nothing documented, as opposed to be able to use my best skill set, which is finding talent opportunities for persons, being able to distribute the products, make those connections globally. It's a lot of messy scenarios, which, while it's good to undo, don't really take the culture forward. So that's my answer. I think it's that the curriculum has to be totally expanded. Law, business, and culture need to be mandatory.
Absolutely. And for you, Elvis, particularly in terms of Tobago.
So I think if you don't know where you come from, it could be a challenge until the time where you're going, right? And I think the survival of any art form, culture, or tradition, it has to be entrenched in some sort of education system. We were educated by storytelling years ago. We now need to have that now integrated in the formal education system. That is the survival. I mean, Jules pointed out to it. When he started, there was no clear pathway in terms of him being an entrepreneur or him being a creative, but he would have found ways in doing so. So how can we capture our stories? How can we capture the pathways that we have followed and we have created over time and make that easier for someone coming up? And it has to be entrenched within an education system. So I see it playing a very critical and pivotal role in how we succeed going forward.
Well, I see we have Afia back, and I don't want to lose her again. Afia, do you have a question that you want to ask? Afia, are you hearing me?
I think her mic is muted, right?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yes.
Hello, everyone hear me, right?
Yes.
Hello? Anyone hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have a question for everyone. I would like to know who inspired y'all for
Yes, continue. Who inspired all of us?
My question is for everyone. Who inspired you?
Okay. All right. Jules, you want to start?
Did y'all hear the question?
Yes.
Yes, we did. We did.
Afia, just for me, my father was the greatest inspiration for me, simply because back in the day when the professions were to become a lawyer, he was a lawyer, or the professions were to be an engineer or a doctor, whatever the case may be. He sat me and he told me he will support anything that I do once it benefits the country. And once it is, that I firmly believe in what it is. He never forced me to follow in the profession that he followed. And that was very inspiring for me. He was able to give me the freedom to be who I wanted to become. And I guess that's what ended up happening.
Elvis?
So I've had scores of different people inspiring me at different phases of my life. You know, coming out from a community, a very small, the village, Pembroke, that's growing up in the countryside, you know, just thinking about, you know, people like Marceline and Mr. John Murray and these people. I was a little boy running away from home to go and do dance in school, you know. So they would have sparked the first sort of, you know, desire in me to kind of really want to be in the arts. And of course, as I advance, you know, going through high school, people like Miss Anita Alfred, I will never stop calling her name, Auntie Val. But of course, the rock for me has been my mother. She has been the one, she has kind of given me that sort of very grounded base for me to kind of really launch from. So I would have had different people. And of course, right now in my life, my wife is inspiring me in terms of the things I'm moving forward with. So over time, you will have different sort of experiences that will have shaped how you see things.
And Carla?
Similarly to both Jules and Elvis, I would say my parents have been amazing inspirations in my life, largely because I did not have any set template to follow in deciding on this field in entertainment law. There was really no path. When I started, I did not have really any seniors. There really were no mentors. So it really was as a result of family belief that said, look, go out there and figure out what you need to do, which is exactly what I've had to do, sort of figure it out every step of the way. But in terms of persons who I would say I not necessarily even really look up to, but whose career paths I find to be absolutely inspirational, different people along the way. So Oprah, for me, has always been somebody that I have found to be quite inspirational. That's the media side of my personality. I like how she conducts herself. I like that she's built an empire. That's really interesting. I also, of course, like Rihanna, again, similarly, building an empire. And I love that she's from Barbados. I love that she reps her Caribbean heritage. I'm very proud of my Caribbean roots. My dad is also Bajan, so I rep the Bajan flag. And that's, I would say, really that's about it. Locally, however, when I started in the entertainment field, I went to different persons for guidance and just sort of inspiration. And Alison Demas would have been one of the first lawyers who was very helpful to me in my career. She was at court at the time. and so on to various people. My aunt, who is a family law judge, Justice Andrea Smart, a lot of different people. So I don't think you really have to have one person, but it's various people along the path who sort of kind of help you virtually, you know, because I've never met any of these people that I mentioned except the local ones, but still I look at them and I'm inspired daily.
Just really quick, who inspired me? My mother is Rock. My mother danced with me in her belly. Yeah, she's first generation Laserfire Dance Company, and I didn't really have a choice. I was fortunate enough to be inspired and mentored by one of the grand dames of dance in San Fernando, Joyce Curtin. May she walk in power. And all through my life, I've always been very, very fortunate to be in spaces where culture was always centered. My uncle is Foundation Fontclair, so Pan was always a part of our existence. Black Stalin was always in my house. And then going abroad and coming back home, I had people like Raymond Chukong in my life. The four pillars of theater, female pillars of theater in Trinidad and Tobago, Auntie Penny, Nikki, Cecilia, Deborah Buko Mason. Now that Raymond has passed, Wendell Man Warren is now a huge, huge influence in my life as well. So I've just been fortunate to sit at the feet of so many elders, and thus why my appreciation and understanding of what culture, arts, and the importance and the power that it has to reform and repair and gift us with opportunity. I think that's why my perspective is as it is. So we have a question inside of the chat that I think is really important. And Carla, this one is definitely for you. Oba is asking, how do we go about trademarking our culture so we can prevent persons from stealing our stuff? And I think we all want to know that. So yeah.
That's a very big question, and that's a very broad topic. So how I would answer that is, in terms of trademarking our culture, trademark, first of all, deals with things like your name, your symbols, your logos, and so forth. So the question of trademarking culture isn't necessarily the right terminology, but I understand where the person is going. So I think what it starts with first is an understanding of what are the various elements in our culture that we can protect. So can it be festival names? For example, there are some countries that have protected some of their festival names patent as trademarks. Is it particular genres of music, for example, that we could look at protecting? It's a whole host of various areas of intellectual property law that we would have to break down into various categories, because the whole question of protection depends on the type of IP. Intellectual property very broadly is copyright, which is literary and music. Trademark is, as I said, brands, logos, and so forth that really entrepreneurs should be protecting, so that when you launch all of your massive, ventures into the wider world, you are clear that nobody is going to just ride off of the efforts that you've put in. Patents, we're talking about inventions, industrial designs, we're talking about ergonomical aspects of things. So, for example, you create a particular type of chair, and so on. The G-Pan is a very good example of our culture that's been protected. So I know I'm not answering your question specifically, but I'm saying that it's a broad categorization of protecting our culture based on different aspects of intellectual property, which goes back to my earlier point of why I feel very strongly about IP being included in our curriculum from a young age, because the kids need to understand this as they develop. Everybody wants to be a YouTuber, a blogger, any animation space and whatnot. But again, we need to understand the questions of protection and how not to infringe on other people's intellectual property. We talk a lot about protecting our own, but we have to remember that we can't usurp and infringe on somebody else's IP while you are building your own brands and while you're building your own companies, because that's going to be very damaging to your reputation and to your business relationships also.
Okay. So, Key, I am hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly this time. You're absolutely right. See, Tahira didn't get to answer in terms of who are some of the people who have influenced you and inspired you to pursue arts and culture.
Well, for me, arts and culture has been my entire life. From since I was young to now, I've been involved in festivals. I've been same as Miss Jackson. I was danced around in a tummy when I was a baby. You know, I was brought to concerts. I've played in multiple panoramas. I've just been so into it that it just became a part of me, and it just, other than art and culture itself, I have Lawrence and Jassy from the Heroes Foundation. They also made me so interested, and even putting me in panels like this, which I am so honored to be in the presence of all of you, by the way. And it's just been so nice having everybody so into art and culture as well. So everybody around me, my family, oh well, I was the one who brought my family into art and culture, but my mom and my brother as well, he's not really that involved, but he learns about it. He's more on the knowledgeable aspect, not really the physical, like the dancing and playing and all that stuff. So my family and the Heroes Foundation, definitely. And my
But
environment.
we could definitely see the excitement and the twinkle in the eye when she's talking about it. So it's very, very clear that the passion is there. And I actually want to ask Afia as well, because she's back. Yay. Afia, who inspires you to want to be is she gone? Afia, can you hear me? Hello? I don't know if she can hear me, but if Afia gets the opportunity to answer, I would also love to hear her answer her own question. In the meantime, however, there's someone in the chat who is asking our young people, to our youths, what's the importance of the arts and culture to you, and how do you think we can rekindle our society's patriotic love for our culture? Let me see if I can get Afia in on it. Afia? Hello? All right, still having some connectivity issues. But Tahira, you heard the question.
Miss?
Yes? She called me Miss Yol. Yes? Afia, you hear? Oh, she's gone again. Okay. Tahira, but yes. How do you think we can rekindle that really patriotic love for arts and culture? And why is it so important to you?
Oh, well, I'll start with the second half of the question. I think we can rekindle our love by teaching in schools, like a lot of you mentioned earlier, like integrating art and culture into back into the curriculum, and being honest with the beauty that is Trinidad and Tobago. Because for me personally, I've heard a lot of negative things in class about Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm just like, wow, it's just it. I mean, yes, nothing is perfect, you know, nothing is perfect. But you know, Trinidad is also so beautiful. I want to hear about all the landmarks. I want to go on field trips to the landmarks, you know, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, field trips, some of them will cut, kind of salty. But other than that, the first half of the question, art and culture for me is something full of expression and full of life, love, experience, and freedom, you know. And what it's meant to me, it means a lot. I actually wrote a paragraph.
Anyone hear me now?
Hi, Afia.
Yes, we're hearing you. We're keeping our fingers crossed. Hi. Afia? Our internet will not let her be great today. What is happening? Okay. But Tahira, I think I love the fact that you mentioned love and freedom, particularly love, because, you know, love is one of those words that gets vilified a little bit. And I think if we understand that at the root of everything that we do, that it has to be based, rooted in ideologies of love and of course freedom. I think that's the answer right there. I should just pretty much answer it. Love and freedom, and reveling and celebrating freedom of expression and freedom of self and all those wonderful things. So, I think we've had an amazing chat this evening. I think we've covered, I wish it was longer. I wish this could be installments. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. But I just want to invite each of our panelists to maybe give a closing comment, something that you want to see, particularly for our young people. A message you might want to give them. They're all there, they're listening in the comments. So maybe, Elvis, we could start with you.
Thank you. So once again, I want to say thank you for having me a part of this panel. To our young people, the first thing I would say to you, let's own it. That's the first thing. Let's own it. I think part of the thing, or for parents, they didn't see a future in the arts. So when I went to my mother and said, hey, I want to become a dancer, they said, no way, don't touch that. So firstly, we need to own it. We need to have the policymakers really invest in it and have a strategic approach to developing it. We've sort of developed it over time, sort of by luck and chance. We need to have a very strategic approach as to how we develop it. So for those who love it, continue loving it, continue pushing for it. The use of technology has made it easier. I am hoping that we have more sessions like this where we could really dive in and dissect so that more young people can understand Drew's pathway, understand Carla's pathway, understand my pathway, and Abio understand your pathway. So the journey for them will not be as difficult. So thank you very much.
Jules?
The future is yours. I believe in you. I believe in each and every one of you to carry the torch. I think really and truly what Elvis said is very important. Having more initiatives such as these are very important so that young persons, the youth, the next generation can hear these stories and be inspired, motivated, empowered to carry that torch even further. And I really do believe that this next generation here are the ones to take it even further to the world. So that's why I always say, I believe in you all, the future is yours. Move forth and conquer.
All right, Caesar. And you, Carla?
I would say it's about having that self-love. I think that as a country, we don't have that sense of identity, which Tahira spoke about. I think that it's important for us as we move along, and especially as children, to be proud of your Caribbeanness, be proud of your Trini accents, be proud of your Caribbean culture. If I had had more time in the presentation, I would have played a clip from Nyla Blackman. It's actually one of my favorite clips ever of the show, of the Business of Carnival. And she said in that clip that growing up, she always found that in school and so on, people talked about, just like Tahira said, people in Trinity's in a negative place. We don't have a clear self-identity. We want to be Americans. We want to be Jamaicans. We want to be everybody else but us. And when we travel, the first thing we do is adopt an overseas accent. But yet, I find when foreigners come to Trinidad and Tobago, they could be here 30 years and they still sound as British as ever, as American as ever. But we go for a year and all of a sudden we're not understood. That is not true. Once you speak, people will understand the words, and having a distinct accent is what allows you to stand out in the room. So that's what I want to say. Make sure that we cultivate that self-love, that identity. And lastly, please go check out a very young emerging artist. I think I have no relation to her, I don't represent her. So it's not that, but I actually think this girl is amazing. Annalie Prime. You also check her out on YouTube. I think she's going to be the next best thing out of Trinidad. She's authentic sound and look, and all of her tracks, I think, have the opportunity to go Global. So let's check it out. Let's like her music. Let's get her going.
Absolutely. And I just want to co-sign that in terms of Annalie Prime and kind of brilliance that young woman has. Just a kind of quiet strength, just doing her thing, carving her path, and you know, in her own voice, and very, very strong in who she is, her look, everything. Anyway, this has been amazing. This has been brilliant. And I have been also honored to be tasked with guiding this conversation today. I wish we had more time. I wish we get the opportunity to do it again. And I just want to congratulate all of the young people who are with us today, and the fact that they have decided that this is the path that they want to walk, because it is not for the faint of heart. It is not for the faint of heart. Ed Deshay, one of the best stage managers in the world, always says this is show business, not show fun. So yes, we have fun, we love what we do, etc. But it is that there is also an element of business to this. Raymond Chukong would always say, do the work. The work is what is important. So if you want the glamour and the fabulousness and all that kind of stuff, yes, at some point it will come, but that is not what it is about. Yeah, that's not what it's about. So we celebrate this moment and we say cheers to the future. We hand it back to Lawrence. Thank you guys so much.
I have given up on trying to unmute myself after each panel. I hope to learn better for the next session. I just want to say a really big thank you to this panel for such an amazing discussion. We have a lot of action items that we are definitely going to take forward at the Heroes Foundation. We are going to have more of these forums. We're going to put some more time into it because we really want to ensure that the arts and culture finds a way to continue to thrive and continue to grow and continue to show the world who we are as Trinidad and Tobago. We're taking a short 1-minute transition and we're going to wrap up the day in our Creating the Way Forward discussion, where our youth panelists are going to present to Minister Brian Manning and Dr. Miriam Abdul-Richards what they want to see come from the people in leadership in this country to help create the way forward. So stay with us.